County and Sioux Falls Planning Commissions, and we'll begin with a few introductory comments. First, as a courtesy for all, make sure your cell phones are turned off. The two planning commissions work together on land use and zone matters within the rural areas surrounding the city. This area is displayed on the screen. After information and testimony is presented on an agenda item, the members will discuss the matter, and then each planning commission will vote independently to derive at a decision. Any final action taken on the conditional use permit request will take effect 5 working days following this meeting unless a written appeal of tonight's decision is filed in the county planning office by Monday, October 30th at 5 p.m. In the event of an appeal, the decision will be referred to the county commission and city council for their joint hearing on Tuesday, November 28th, 2017 at 5 p.m. That meeting is held in Carnegie Hall at 235 West 10th Street. When the joint agenda is completed, the City Planning Commission will adjourn and the meeting will continue as the County Planning Commission considers items beyond the joint zoning jurisdiction. At this time, the Planning Commission will consider the consent agenda. The minutes of the August 28th meeting are included on the consent agenda. Are there any objections from the Planning Commission members on any items listed on the consent agenda? None on the county side, none on the city side.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order, make sure we use our microphones. The overflow room is full,
Okay, that's the only way they will hear is if we use the over.
unless you're really loud.
That's why I was speaking up. I thought they'd hear me through the wall. Okay. Here we go. Next, I will read each item on the consent agenda. If any member of the audience objects to the item, please raise your hand, and the item will be moved to the regular agenda and allow you to address the commission later in the meeting. On the consent agenda, item number 1 is the approval of the minutes from August 28th, 2017. Item number 2 is conditional use permit 1772 to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building, requesting 1,380. Brad Archer is the petitioner. It's at 2904 South George Street, approximately a half mile east of Sioux Falls. This would allow 1,380 square total accessory building area. Any no objections in the audience? Item number 3, conditional use permit 1774 to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building, requesting 2,400. Joseph Rosher is the petitioner. It is at 6103 North Kiwanis Avenue, approximately a quarter mile north of Sioux Falls. This would allow 2,400 of total accessory building area. I see no objections to that. Item number 4, conditional use permits 1780 to exceed 1,200 square feet of total accessory building, requesting 5,616. This is Dean M. Wilson as the petitioner. It's at 8801 North Kiwanis Avenue, approximately a half mile north of Sioux Falls. This would allow 5,616 square feet of total accessory building area. Okay, seeing no objections, so we will call for actions on the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the county side. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries on the county side.
On the city side, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Approved on the city side.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to the regular agenda.
Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, just let people know that if those items that were just okay.
Okay, now if your items 2, 3, or 4, you are free to leave. Your item has been approved. And then we will move to the regular agenda. Item number 5. We'll give those people a second to leave. It opens up a few more seats right there. Okay, item number 5, Kevin, this is a conditional use permit to transfer 3 building eligibility. We got Mark Kuka is the petitioner. The owner is the Douglas A. Klein Family Trust at 4767 Slip Up Creek Road, approximately a half mile north of Sioux Falls.
Yes, Kevin Hookman, County Planning Department. This item, I have spoken with the petitioner, and he has verbally withdrawn the item. He also has not notified the neighbors, so we just need a acknowledgement of the withdrawal.
All right. So that's not a motion, just It is a motion?
motion, yep.
Okay, we need a motion that, for the withdrawal.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion is withdrawn from the regular agenda on the county side.
On the city side, a motion to withdraw item number 5.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the withdrawal of item number 5, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign. Item is withdrawn on the city side.
Okay, we'll move to item number 6, conditional use permit 1776 to allow retail sales of fireworks. Petitioner is Andy Jorgensen. Its location is 8101 West 12th Street, Sioux Falls.
Kevin Hookman again with the planning department. This item, as you noted, this is for a retail sales of fireworks at this location at 8101 West 12th Street. As you can see, the property is located near the Ellis Road and partially surrounded by the city. The petitioner, this is the second time the petitioner has been in front of this body for this permit, as he's been operating there for the last 2 years, and the joint council and the commission has approved for 2 years with a sunset clause. The staff has reviewed his new application and given out new recommendations for the petitioner. Over the last 2 years, we have not received any complaints from neighbors. As you note in the staff report, we have received a complaint from a nearby competitor of his, and staff has investigated those complaints and did not find them to be valid complaints. Kind of in lieu of everybody's time here, I guess I'll just, since this item has been before us in the past, I'll just make some notes of the changes to the conditions that have happened since the previous permit application and what the petitioner has requested. The petitioner has requested a change in time to the application. Previously, we allowed fireworks sales between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. And the petitioner would like to sell all the way up to midnight. Staff feels that that may not be the most appropriate with the residential dwellings located to the south, and recommend to keep the 10 a.m. Close time for the hours of operation. And then the next condition that will change is that the sunset clause will last until August 1st of 2022. So he'll have that 2022 season to be able to keep his business open. That gives him 5 years more of operating at the site. That would allow him to keep his site, maintain the business, and allowing, if there is new development in the area, we can address it at that time in 5 years from now. So at that, staff recommends approval with the conditions that are listed, and I could read them off if you like. Otherwise, we can move to the
Go through
petition.
it since we didn't.
The condition number 1, the property shall adhere to the submitted site plan and site plan narrative. Condition number 2, no outside storage shall be allowed at any time. Condition number 3, the retail sales of fireworks must abide by all applicable South Dakota laws and regulations. Number 4, the retail sales of fireworks may only be marketable for 9 days per calendar year. Number 5, all outdoor lights in use for the building or to illuminate the parking area shall be directed away from the single-family dwellings. Number 6, building permits are required for all structural changes. Number 7, temporary signs for business are allowed to be placed no earlier than June 13th and must be taken down by July 10th. The temporary freestanding sign is allowed not to exceed 32 square feet. One temporary wall sign is allowed per building face, not to exceed 1 square foot per linear foot of building frontage. And condition number 8, flags that are used for advertising shall be located on the subject properties, not block the view of traffic of entering or exiting the property, and shall be placed during regular 9 day selling period of June 27th through July 5th. Number 9, no parking or stacking of vehicles shall be allowed in the right-of-way of any time. Number 10, the hours of operation for the public will be between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. Setup and tear down activities outside of the 9-day sales period must take place between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Number 11, no storage of fireworks is allowed from August 1st to June 10th. Number 12, the driveway as indicated on the site plan shall be configured to have a minimum 24 feet wide driving area. Gravel must be placed in the driveway to meet the minimum improvements and maintenance standards of Article 1604 of the ordinance from the shoulder of the road to 15 feet onto the property. Number 13, the operation will be allowed to operate under the conditions of this permit until August 1st, 2022. The business owner will be required to obtain another conditional use permit if they wish to continue operation at this location. Number 14, the Planning and Zoning Department reserves the right to enter and inspect the fireworks stand at any time after proper notice to the owner to ensure that the property is in full compliance with the conditional use permit conditions of approval and of Minnehaha County zoning ordinance.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Any questions of the staff? Okay. We'll ask the petitioner to come forward, please, then.
It's good to see you guys again.
State your name and address, please, for the record.
Andy Jorgensen, 1604 South Williams Avenue here in Sioux Falls. So Kevin and I have been getting to know each other a lot over the past 2 years, probably more so than we'd like. So I just wanted to come forward today and have a request, give you guys an update as well. Give the overhead ready. I got some sweet pictures for you. Just as an update as to what's happened with this property in the past 2 years, I came before you guys 2 years ago, and we were able to get something passed through, and we launched Fire Brothers Fireworks, and our goal is to bring fireworks sales online. It's been successful. I'll show you a little bit more about that. So as a preface, after we had this happen and we got the permit, before we had actually wrote a petition up with every single neighbor that I knocked on the door of to make sure that the neighbors were fully aware this was happening and that they would like it. And every single one of them was more than happy to welcome me to the neighborhood. There, you've got that. So what we did is we had, if you can see the pictures here, we had this old barn on 8101 here, and we had 60 days to get this going. And beyond that, we had to fix, obviously, there's some tires on the roof, there's some walls falling off of this thing. So I did what any entrepreneur would do, and I asked for help. So I had a bunch of people painting up this barn. We made capital improvements to the barn, which were a lot more than I'd like to admit. It wasn't as efficient as I was able to be in my mind. But lo and behold, there we go. We were able to get that going. And so that is what you see today. It's empty right now, so we don't have anything in there. There's no storage off season, but it's a red barn. We call it the Boom Barn, and it's the primary place in my business right now. And I have a very, very good relationship with Dan Aesop. My one request is that we would remove any restriction that would make me come before you guys a third time. And here's why. It's Kevin and I have been exhausted working back and forth on this. He even expressed himself that it's a lot of work to go through this. It's cost me money. Last conditional use permit, I got my sign stolen, so that's $50 out the window. And so I'm doing my best to run and grow this business in Sioux Falls. And I would love to just have this spot and not have to come before you guys again and just grow it in Sioux Falls. And to my knowledge, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, if they approve this without a limit, you guys can always take away the conditional use permit. Is that correct?
If you don't abide by the conditions, we could.
Okay. Through a hearing process. And so by all rights, there's a competitor of mine down the street, and he has been there for years and years and years. He is closer inside city limits. And I'm just asking the same liberties that guy has. I know him. He's a good individual, runs a very, very good business, and I'm asking for nothing more than he has. And so that's what I have for you guys today.
All right, any questions of the petitioner? Any questions? Okay.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone in the audience care to address this? Okay, seeing none. Discussion and action.
Mr. Chairman, a question for staff. So most businesses operate without a recurring permit process, right? I mean, so is there an issue there if we were to permit him to operate until whatever?
Sure. As he referenced, there is a fireworks stand down the street to the east that is surrounded by the city, except for a couple of neighbors that are also surrounded by the city, and they are allowed to operate as long as they remain not part of the city. But as the city grows and new uses surround it, fireworks sales are not allowed within the city limits. And to be completely surrounded by the city or have similar type situation may not be the best for future growth of what we feel is for the city and for the area.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so my question really is, I expect that things would change if the city were to absorb this property, but in the absence of that, is there any reason why he'd have to come back every 3 years, every 5 years, or?
Other than the sunset clause, I suppose not, as long as it would remain in the county.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to address this or offer a motion or suggestions? I think the time thing is fine, at 10 o'clock and not midnight.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would make a motion to approve this, deleting what's currently listed as condition 13, the sunset at 2022. I mean, the sunset may occur when the city, when it becomes part of the city, but I don't know. I do enjoy his presentations every couple of years, but
Okay, so we have a motion to, without condition 13.
correct.
Any comments, or do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second without number 13. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries without item 16. 13, excuse me.
On the city side,
I have a question for Kevin. It indicates that a conditional use is required because it's only allowed on that basis with regards to property in the A1 agricultural district. So how can we, if there's no condition relative to the application any longer, isn't there an issue of how we can adopt that?
Well, the sunset clause, as Jeff pointed out, it isn't typical to conditional use permits. Typically, a conditional use permit is approved, and as long as they continue meeting those conditions, they can remain in business as long as they want. So, yeah.
so what you're saying, Kevin, with this sunset clause removed, this would preclude potential annexation action into the city of Sioux Falls?
No, the city could still annex it. Say the property owner can choose to become part of the city at any time. And then they would have to abide by the city rules. Or so if the city chooses to annex the property, like say a forcible annexation, then they would have to abide by the city rules as well.
So at that time, when this becomes annexed, conditional use or not, it's game over for that business.
Correct.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Jeff, do we have a timeline on when we think that might happen?
Jeff Schmidt representing city staff on this item and others tonight.
There's, as you can see by the exhibit, there's already city utilities in this area. There's a hard surface road, there's water and sewer. So at this point with this property as well as the other property, as Kevin already mentioned, it's really up to the property owner to request annexation. That could happen at that time, or if there was a city annexation requested, it could happen on either one of those. It's not necessarily a delayed on either one of them because they could be effective immediately.
Okay.
It's just a timing on the property owner at this point because the city initiated ones have been delayed.
Thanks.
At which time this conditional use permit would be void, correct?
One other clarification quick, Kevin or Jeff. The motions have to match to be approved. If they're different in any way, it's denied.
No, it automatically goes.
Yes, if they match, it's approved. If they are different anyway, it's an automatic appeal, essentially. It automatically goes to the county commission, city council. joint
Thank you.
meeting. Yep.
On that, I will look for commission action.
Make a motion to approve with removing item number 13 from the condition.
We have a motion to approve, removing item number 13. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion.
I guess I kind of feel like it makes sense right now. Once the city decides or the property owners decide to annex it in, he's not going to be able to have this conditional use anyways. So I don't know if putting a term on it really does much at this point in time.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I struggled with this one 2 years ago because fireworks sales are not allowed in the city of Sioux Falls, and this is relatively surrounded by the city. Just from the city's standpoint, I'm not sure fireworks sales should be allowed there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approval of item number 5 with the removal of item number 13 from the conditional use, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, same sign.
Yes.
3-1, passes on the city side.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is conditional use permit 1774 to allow rock, sand, and gravel extraction. Petitioner is Great Bear Sand and Gravel. The Woods Family Partnership is the property owner. It's located at the East Dyke Place and North Cliff Avenue. And Scott Anderson, you are reporting.
Yes, Scott Anderson, Planning, Minnehaha County Planning. You have a request before you tonight, a conditional use permit request 1777 to allow sand and gravel extraction on approximately 160 acres. I'll go over a staff report and I have some general pictures of the site. The applicant is Great Bear Sand and Gravel, and as you indicated, the property owner is Woods Family Farm Partnership. This is the approximately 159 acres of property upon which the sand and gravel operation would occur. Generally, you could say it's north of Interstate 90 and west of Cliff Avenue and south of 72nd, and which is basically on the north side of Sioux Falls. You can see the city limits shown on the slide, sort of the lighter color. This is the people that were notified by me as the planning director. There's an interesting caveat in the zoning ordinance that indicates that the planning director has to notify everyone within 1 mile or the closest 30 residences. And I had the GIS ran a list, and this was the list that was supplied. Then, in addition, the applicant also notified all the property owners within 500 feet. So with sand and gravel operations, there are basically 2 notifications that occur, and these don't come up a lot in the city, so I'm sort of helping explain this for more of the city planning commissioners. We've had a couple of these recently in the county, so there's a dual notification that is met for these, as well as signage that's put on the property. So this shows the topography of the site. It's generally flat, and you'll see from the pictures it's very flat. It is located within the Big Sioux, the floodplain of the Big Sioux River. It's also located within a water source protection area. This shows the phasing of the mining that the applicant would be proposing. They are indicating that they would have a berm all pretty much around the property. You can see the white, if I can, this white here signifies a berm that the applicant is proposing. This would be a large lake. I would anticipate or estimate that that is maybe between 80 and 100 acres of lake. And then around that, they are showing some kind of future development and some resort cabins. So that is the request. So these are the slides. As I indicated, I'm standing on a dike, basically looking to the north. It was in soybeans this year. The soybeans have been taken off the property. It is relatively flat. You can see 72nd Street to the north. This is looking sort of towards the northeast, and you can see the residential development that's located within the city across the street from Cliff Avenue. This is looking straight on that dike to the south. There's also residential development and some industrial commercial uses between the interstate and the subject property. This is looking to the northwest towards the Big Sioux River. Once again, shows another picture of the subdivision that's located within the city. And I'll go back. I think the best slide for me to explain or go over the staff report would be this slide. So as I indicated, this is approximately 153 acres, and it is located within the Big Sioux River. There are many formations which supply sand and gravel within the area. A lot of those are located along the Skunk Creek basin between Ellis and Hartford. There are many, many mines that we deal with on occasion. The extraction area is located in what I would say is more of a residential area, and there are...
Guys, we don't need comments at this time. He is giving a presentation. You will get a time to speak. You will have a time to speak when it's your turn. We don't need comments in the background at this time.
There appear to be more than 100 residences that are located within the general vicinity and within the 1,000 feet of area, or within 1,000 feet of the area to be mined. The zoning ordinance indicates that a waiver should be obtained for every residence that's within that 1,000 foot buffer, and the applicant did not provide a single waiver of any of those residential dwellings or the residences. The applicant did provide a narrative, a hydrologic study, and a site plan, which I included for your review. The site plan indicates, as I showed you on the slides, that once the mining activity concludes, there would be in excess of 40 acres of water that would remain, and this is to be called Golden Lake Park, and it would be redeveloped as a resort and a mobile home park. The conditional use permit was submitted to the Sioux Falls Regional Airport for review, and on October 12th, I received a letter from Dan Lettler, the airport manager, indicating that serious concerns with the proposed mining activity. He indicated that the proposal or the proposed mining activity is at the end of the primary instrument runway 21, and with the resulting open water, he expressed the airport's concern for this to be a draw for waterfall and to basically threaten the future operational use of the regional airport. And As you know, we look at several elements of a conditional use permit to determine whether it's compatible, its compatibility with the existing land uses and from a zoning aspect. And one of the items you are to look at is the effect it would have on the enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity for the uses that are already permitted and for the property values in the area. And my evaluation would be that it would have significant impact, not only on the major regional airport that's in the vicinity, but it would also have a negative impact for the enjoyment of the residential property owners in the area by greatly increasing truck traffic, noise, and dust. Secondly, you are to consider what kind of impact and effect this would have on the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses that are predominant in the area. The proposed conditional use permit could negatively impact the normal development of the area by further restricting the residential development during the mining activity. I will note, as I will reiterate, that this is within a floodplain, so residential development is going to be problematic in this instance and in this location. So it is unlikely that you're going to see much more residential development without some kind of flood measures being implemented, like a dike or elevating the residences to out of the floodplain. 3, what kind of utilities are available, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities that are provided for the proposed use. In my opinion, there are adequate roads to accommodate the proposed use, and you can see it is close to the interstate, it's on paved roads, so that's definitely a benefit or a positive aspect. And there are utilities in the area that can be utilized, electricity primarily. Number 4, is there off-street parking and loading requirements to be met, and those would be met. They have plenty of area upon which off-street parking could be provided for workers, so that would not be an issue. 5th, would measures be taken to control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, vibration, and lighting? As I indicated, the applicants proposed a berm, which would be a measure that would reduce some of the negative aspects of the mining activities. However, it would be very difficult to control other things like dust and noise. And finally, you are to consider the general health, safety, and the welfare of the public and the comprehensive plan. This is where my review would determine that the proposed use is not compatible with the existing uses in the general vicinity. With this specific request, the proposed use will result in serious conflicting land uses, both for the residential land uses to the north, east, and south, and also, very significantly, it will negatively impact the safety, I feel, of the Sioux Falls Regional Airport. The airport has seen significant growth over the past decade, with the number of flights that is likely to increase as the population in the region grows. I feel that the potential for bird strikes into planes should be considered, and the mining activity will result in a large body of water that will attract various types of birds, including large waterfowl. The proposed sand and mining activity would be a threat to the health and safety of the traveling public, and it's not really following the intent of the comprehensive plan to reduce conflicting land uses. The applicant has failed to submit the necessary waivers from the residences within the 1,000-foot buffer within the subject property under consideration for the sand and gravel. These residences will be impacted by noise, traffic, and potentially dust. Due to the incompatibility of the proposed land uses with the existing land uses, staff finds that the proposed conditional use permit is to be not in the best interest of the public and a threat to the safety of the public. And so staff is recommending denial of conditional use permit 17-77. So I would be glad to answer any questions.
Scott, you had sent an email earlier, something from the Sioux Falls Water Department?
Yes. I learned today that there are some wells that are generally in the area that the city of Sioux Falls uses, and I routed the request with my staff report and the supporting documentation that you've seen, the hydrology study and the redevelopment plan, to Greg Anderson. He's basically the water supervisor. I'm not exactly sure his title. He runs the water facility for the city, and I forwarded you an email. He has serious concerns that it's in the water source protection area. He said that he thought there might be some issues. He wanted some additional time if it looked like there was going to be some motions to approve it tonight. He had some concerns and asked for time to review the request. But
Okay, questions of staff before you go on? You got-
I did receive some letters of opposition. I forwarded those to you, and I forwarded them to the city, and I think that you also have a copy of them in front of you as well. And I did give a copy of a letter that I received to the applicant as well.
Okay. All right, there's a petitioner here. Please come forward. Name and address, please.
Harold Gade, 3501 River Bluff Road, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Owners, Great Bear Sand and Gravel. I looked at all the comments he sent back, and I went through some answers on the majority of them. There's a few things came up a little surprised when I got the letter from the commission the other day. I didn't know anything about the airport when we did this project to start with. So, but as far as dust control and stuff, this is a sand pit, and the sand's all coming out of the water, so it's going to be wet. It will be a more limited amount of dust than most pits. We can do dust control with water trucks and other ways. We have, if we could switch this to the plan with the dikes on. Right there, okay. We have a plan of coming in off of that dike road, which is a commercial road, with going right to Cliff Avenue where there is a stoplight, so we have controlled traffic for the trucks to come in and out. We also have a blacktop road going into our scale house and a tracking station from there, so our trucks should not carry a lot of dirt or dust out to the street. We have several other sand and gravel pits in the city limits of Sioux Falls, and we work hard on keeping all the dirt and dust off the streets while we're using them. If there is a problem, we've always been there to take care of it, which this should be a minimum the way the roads are. That was some of the traffic too. Cliff Avenue is a truck route, and it will not more necessarily increase or decrease any more traffic for the city of Sioux Falls as truck traffic, because the further we go out to get sand and gravel, the more trucks we gotta use to do it. This is a close sand source for the city of Sioux Falls. The majority of the sand will go into the city of Sioux Falls, as that's where we sell 95% of all of our material. Right now, we get 99% of all of our sand out of the city limits of Sioux Falls, but that pit will be running out shortly. There is 20-some pits in the city of Sioux Falls are touching the edge of it, the city limits in this town right now. So it's not uncommon to have pits inside the city of Sioux Falls. As far as the airport going, I did a little studying today. I took the Minneapolis airport, has large bodies of water on the end of every runway. The Des Moines airport has large bodies of water within 1,000 feet of the airport. The Sioux City airport has large waters within 1,000 feet of the airport. Every one of these cities went up and down. Minneapolis, Sioux City, every one of those airports are within the flyway of the geese, just like the city of Sioux Falls. I mean, I don't know why all the other airports can have water around within 1,000 feet of their airport, and big quantities of water would have any more or less or greater danger for geese than we do. And I sent letters out to all the 500 residents, and nobody gave us any more information about notifying the other 500 feet farther out till I got the zoning notice. Was the first we heard about getting 1,000 feet out. I mean, another 500 feet out past the sand and gravel pit. This sand pit would probably have least impact of any sand pit in the city of Sioux Falls by where we can access and exit, because we would come right out the cliff and get right to the interstate to go around the town to deliver the materials.
But you did not have any waivers from any of the 100 residents?
Yeah, I have some waivers, but I didn't get them all back till last week, and I had time to get into him, but I do have some of them. And I sent the rest out, and they haven't come back yet, but I did send them all out to within 500 feet of the mine. So.
Yes, Scott, you want to?
I think I just want to clarify, there's a difference between mailing a notification, a hearing notification, and then actually having a property owner sign a waiver. And I think the planning commission knows what that is, but a hearing notice you just mail out. A waiver, basically, the property owner within that 1,000 feet acknowledges and has no issues with the activity that's occurring. I mean, we do waivers with feedlots, and so that's a waiver.
Is it normally required for a sand and gravel pit to have waivers for everybody within 1,000 feet
It is.
on every sand pit?
And that's in the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Any questions of the petitioner?
City side?
Okay, thank you. The way we usually handle this, we have the proponents go first and the opposition second. Anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this item, please come forward. Seeing none, any other proponents? If not, we always call for 3 times. Now we'll ask for opposition to this measure. Please come forward, state your name and address.
Mr. Chair, could I ask
Yes.
a question to Scott quick?
Yes.
Before we get started? Scott, without there being the waivers in place, and this isn't a variance request, it's a conditional use request that would require waivers, can we even approve it anyway?
The way the zoning ordinance reads, it says the applicant should obtain the waivers of the property owner, or any residence within 1,000 feet. It does not say shall, and
Okay.
so it's not mandatory. It's strongly suggested that you obtain the waiver. You may recall, for example, last month we had a sand and gravel operation. There was one residence that was within that 1,000 feet, and they had a waiver. So it's in the zoning ordinance that they should obtain a waiver of any residence within 1,000 feet.
And how about with the airport? Same thing within that zone?
The zoning ordinance doesn't mention anything about airports within the text of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Schmidt again. So I was going to clarify the airport issue. The city of Sioux Falls has an airport overlay district. It's in our zoning ordinance for the airport boundary. It goes north to 60th Street North. There isn't any airport ordinance in Minnehaha County's ordinance or in the joint jurisdiction ordinance. So it's the same issue in any other language where you can't enforce somebody's ordinance if it's not in your zoning authority. So while it's something that you want to discuss and issue and talk about tonight about the protection of the airport, but don't come back and say, what does it say in our ordinance about, there's nothing in your ordinance that says to protect the airport. So it gets to be a little bit confusing. I was the author of the airport ordinance back in 2006, 2007. We worked hard to try to protect the airport, but property owners came back and said, don't mess with our property rights, leave us alone. And so we restricted and moved it off of everybody's property, and we shrunk it down. So now it's Minnesota Avenue, I-29, 60th Street North, and Russell. It's really small because nobody wants to take away their own rights, even single-family homeowners. So the airport area is significantly smaller than it could be. So just to clarify that, if you ever need more information on that. So the airport thing's kind of mute.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff, recognizing that the county staff has opined to deny this, does the city staff have an opinion?
City staff may have an opinion. My opinion is, okay, and I don't know again if I'm speaking for everybody in the city, but this is, as Scott already mentioned, it's in the floodplain. That's going to be very difficult to do any single family residential or residential habitable structures up here at all. So how we have it in our comprehensive plan is for transitional uses up in this area, ag-based, basically in a floodplain, which includes mining operations. So when we looked at it, we were like, this is a transitional use and a mining operations is appropriate. I'm not for it or against it, but it's an appropriate use with a conditional use. And now how do you mitigate those impacts? But single family is not appropriate up here because it floods.
Any other questions, staff?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On this side, if I can ask, Jeff, as long as you're up there, would you comment on the communication
Yes.
from the city water division?
John mentioned that real quick when I came in. The Water Source Protection Overlay District is in the joint jurisdiction area and in Minnehaha County. So as Greg Anderson mentioned, he would like more time to review the Water Source Protection Overlay District, but the intent is pretty obvious that they want to protect all of the wells and look at what they could do to mitigate anything for the water resources. But with it, it says that they can do all of these types of uses that are allowed in the water source protection area, and there's certain things that are prohibited. But basically, mining operations are allowed. What they don't want to see is they don't want to see tanks. They don't want to see storage of petroleum products. They don't want to see hazardous waste. They don't want to see certain chemicals that would then impact the natural resources of the well. So that's where the water department was looking at is a mine could be operated, a quarry could be, extraction could be, but how do you mitigate those uses? And Greg was saying, if it got close, he would want to try to look at what's going to be at the quarry. Or
Most of that
extraction.
is addressed on the state permit that they received to do this, is it not?
Yes.
And then we typically have conditions that you can't store fuel.
Yes.
In there.
All that
Correct.
stuff is in there.
That's kind of how I looked at it too, and this is a conditional use already. Can you do extraction? Yes, with these conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else to staff before we call for comments from the audience? Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Gene Thill,
Okay, address, please, Gene?
1002 East 65th Street North.
Okay.
I live about 200 feet from the dike, which would be about 300 feet from this water, this pit. You people never heard this, and you never will hear it. You won't hear it from nobody else. I'm telling you like it is. In 1969, the water was going down in Catfish Bay and out in the field and coming up in Catfish Bay. It finds a vein, and that's what's going on. The same veins are north of my house. In 1969, that vein was the water pressure from out in the field was going down and coming past my house so fast that it took 17 feet and wide and 15 feet deep and sucked it into a dry well. Think about that. Pressure, it was trying to fill a void south of the interstate, is what it was trying to do. The same thing is in Catfish Bay, is the same thing as why the Corps of Engineers condemned the dike. Most people don't know they condemned the dike, but they did condemn the dike. When they condemned the dike, they put another dike in to hold the water into Catfish Bay. But they can't hold the water into Catfish Bay because they took all the sand and gravel out of it. Now there's nothing showing up the dike. There's nothing showing up. the north side of the interstate. So all the water is gonna go down, and that field is gonna go down into them veins and gonna head south. And this is what's gonna affect the airport when the dike fails. And it will fail, because the dike is no good. Because there's no ground on the south side of the dike. It's all water. And they took it all the way from the interstate, that's all water. So it's just, when it hits them gravel veins, it's gonna go right straight through. There's nothing to stop it. In '69, there was dirt in there, in the Grapefruit Bay. That's why they could sandbag it. You get more than just a little thing going on here. It's serious to the city. And if you people can understand what I'm talking about, you'll check into it. This is, I can't even imagine nobody taking any responsibility if the dike fails. There's nobody taking no responsibility for it. They won't fix it. You know why they won't fix it? They won't fix it because money. If they fix it, then that's admitting that something's wrong. So they don't admit nothing's wrong. We'll have another latrina. But I'm telling you about these gravel veins. When they put this pit out there, they're going to open all these gravel veins going and letting the water go south. Because there's nothing going to stop it once they take the dirt out. Remember what I said, check it out, please.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Okay, anyone else in the audience care to address this? I believe you were getting up, sir.
Dan Lettler with the Sioux Falls Regional Airport, 3800 South Florence Avenue. Just a couple comments from the airport's perspective. This new proposed mine, ultimately lake, is our primary concern. The location of this lake is in a direct line, about 1.5 miles from the end of our primary runway. So whether you're taking off or landing on our primary instrument approach runway, you would come across a 50-acre lake. And we struggle already on a year-round basis with geese, other wildfowl, and especially in the migration periods of the year now, it's even more of a struggle. Adding a 50-acre lake for 10,000 geese to hang out with for a few weeks out of the year is just a recipe for disaster. Certainly, as the petitioner had mentioned, certainly there are other airports around the country near bodies of water, but the Missouri River, Minnesota River, those already existed. They didn't allow a man-made lake right at the approach of their main runway. So in our view, it's a significant safety risk if it were allowed to go forward, as, again, our flight operations continue to increase, and it's just the worst possible location for a new lake. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else care? Ma'am, go ahead.
Courtney Vandenberg, 1305 East 67th Street North. My property is approximately 1,000 feet from the buffer zone of their proposed operation. My concern is not only did we not receive notice or any information regarding this plan, other than neighbors talking about it, is they're going to put a gravel pit and a sand pit, and he says that it's going to minimize the dust and the impact to these children. But if you pull the residents in that community that I live in to the south or even to the north of where that is, there are thousands of children. There are daycares that will be dramatically impacted by this. My son has chronic allergies, and this would only cause more health conditions for him. So you're going to force us out of our home, which is not right.
Okay, thank you. Sir, you were getting ready to get up? Anyone else care to address this? If you have something new especially to address, please come forward, state your name and address.
Robert Fahey, 904 East 65th Street North. I've only lived in this area about 20 years. Most of my neighbors have been there from 40 to 55 years. Those that have been there the longest couldn't be here tonight. They're elderly, they're in their 80s, and they go to bed long before this. Most of them have some type of a health issue. The dust, I can't address how much dust it will be or how well it'll be taken, but I do know it will present problems for these people. As for myself, I have 2 wells on my property that I use all the time. One of them I use for drinking water because it's better than the city water by the tests. So I think this will have a dramatic impact on our little community up there. And I think the proof is in the pudding. Look at how many people are here tonight on this issue. Overfull crowd. I mean, that's pretty serious to all of us that live there. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'm Mark Christopherson, 1301 East 67th Street North. I'm Courtney's neighbor directly to the west. 13 years ago, I was one of the first people to build out there, and I just love the area. I can step out on my deck and look out at a 160-acre plot of country. I don't want to step out on my deck and look at a frickin' gravel pit. I built my home in good faith, and we all had said that Granite Valley is one of the best kept secrets in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It's a wonderful little area. Just love it out there. This is a radical change, folks. Not good. I had 9 points. We touched on them. Other people have, and I'm not very eloquent. There's a sidewalk now that we can walk on. We can ride our bikes out there, you know, and quite a few. We have Betty in the neighborhood. I don't know if she's here tonight, but she rides her bike there. And she's just a treasure, and she's on there riding her bike with her husband miles a day on her bike. God bless her. I can't do that. I can do a couple of miles, and that's about it. But it is easy access for me to go to where I work. I work in a little cafe, and it's easy access for me to go to cafes just down the street, and I walk on that sidewalk. And this is going to be one busy deal. It already is fairly busy, but putting huge gravel trucks hauling, not a great idea. I just feel this should really be not considered, folks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have anything new to add? Go ahead, sir.
Greg Erickson, 6509 North Fairfax. Just across the street from Mr. Thill. Been in the area for 6 years. The thing that, most everything that I've had written down to talk about has already been discussed, so we're not going to go over that again. We're going to beat a dead horse to death. The other thing that we're talking about, this gentleman that just finished talking about, is we're talking about in this community that we live in, which is directly south of where that pit's going to be, is some of the most wonderful neighbors, well-kept homes, not pieces of junk that are rotten and falling down about themselves because nobody cares for their property. It's just the opposite. A lot of the people there are in my age group. We're coming on the area in our life where somewhere along the line, God allows us, we won't have to go to some other place to live. We can live in our homes until we pass away. And we enjoy those places. But as our society is proving every day, we're living longer, we're falling apart. Talked with the doctor when I went and had my physical, and he says, you know, Greg, the only problem we're dealing with this day is we're outliving our own warranty. We're all getting sick from whatever. Property value is what I'm hitting on here. If we have to turn around at some point and go to an old folks home, what's my property going to sell for? As soon as that pit gets out there, our property's in the toilet. Thank you.
State your name and address, please.
I'm Kathy Scott, and I'm currently building a house at 1516 East 67th Street North, which is straight east of here. That my property will be ready to move in probably the 1st of next month. And quite honestly, I would not have built out there or bought a lot had I known the gravel pit was being considered. And I would assume others following suit won't now, and property value will go down for everyone. And there is concerns the berm will not control the dust. I'm assuming, you know, the sand we're talking about is wet, but I'm assuming they'll have stockpiles that will not be wet. And as far as the airport with Minneapolis, Sioux City, just because theirs are by water, it doesn't mean it's right or the best option. So I know he addressed those things fine. I just wanted to comment. I would not have purchased land out there, and it'll probably hurt the growth of that area of Sioux Falls.
All right, thank you. We'll take a few more, if none. See if there are any new comments.
Good evening. My name is Bud Van Bakker, and I live at 5701 North Gold Nugget Avenue. We bought our property in 2004, built in 2005, so we've been out there pretty much the beginning of the build out there. And in 2008, when of course the housing market left the track, and so this summer, thankfully, we've had I think 22 or 23 houses built, first time since 2008. And of course, these houses now that are being built are the houses that are farther in. And of course, they're bigger houses now. They're houses that are going to start bringing the median volume up in our neighborhood, which is wonderful for all of us because it's been real sparse since 2008. My real question is, in my backyard is our retention pond that they built. It's not a detention pond, but it's actually a retention pond. It holds the water. And on the west side of this pond, up about 2/3 of the way, is a culvert that when that pond gets so full, it runs out the culvert, it goes into the ditch on the east side of Cliff Avenue, or 115, runs down to culverts that go under Cliff into that area. And I don't know if there's been thought or what they've are going to do with that, because they certainly can't block it off or plug it up or stop it. So, I mean, that path of water, I think, is set to go that way. Now, whether they're going to continue letting that water go in there, I guess earlier discussion was they're talking about when it gets annexed into the city, that section along Cliff Avenue will automatically become a light industrial or commercial or whatever. They can put, whether it's strip malls or whatever there, you know, whether that water is going to run underneath of those. It's just something to consider if you didn't know that there is a water flow that comes out of that retention pond into the west side or the east side of Cliff, under Cliff, to the west side. So, and thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you.
I'm Linda Pearson, and I live at 5413 North Indiana Avenue, which is just on the other side of the dike from where they're going to build the gravel pit. I have a really nice house. I love it. I have well water. It's very good. I understand that progress, you build, you make gravel pits, you have them, and there are some gravel pits that do border around the city of Sioux Falls. However, those gravel pits were started before houses were built. We live in existing neighborhoods that have been established, and we keep our places up. It's very nice. So I don't see where moving in a gravel pit is going to help us gain anything. The roads are going to go to pieces. There's going to be dust. We're going to get sick. He said he's going to put a dike up, which is great. I worked at a gravel pit for 20 years. It's dusty. You don't drive your good car to work. You buy an old junker because it gets sandblasted when the wind blows. You don't wear your good clothes. You dress in whatever is old because it's gonna, the dust and the sand is there regardless how much water you put on it. The truck traffic alone will cause dust. It doesn't matter if the roads are paved or not. I've worked in both environments, and there's still the dust. It's there day and night. You go home and you feel like you've been dusted. You need to shower. To me, it'll make my property value go down, which I don't want. He's gonna reclaim this in 30 years. Let's see, I will be 93 years old. I don't think I'm gonna get to enjoy it. Will I be able to, take a kayak in that lake then? No, I'm concerned about my property now. That's all I have.
Thank you. There's one guy standing behind the pole yet, yes.
I'm not much of a speaker, but I'm here to.
Your name and address.
Oh,
please.
Dick Wild, 812 West, 72nd Street West. I'm going to start out. I have been in the construction and trucking and gravel business for 48 years. And this will have an effect on the people around them. It's going to have an effect on the wells that are on them. It's going to have an effect on people's health, and whether some people want to believe it or not, that's the way it is. And we brought some property about 4 years ago. Our intention is to improve it, working at it. And if this happens, it sure takes away the things that we planned on doing because, like I said, I've been in this business for 48 years, and it's not the cleanest business in the world. And with that being said, I always remember a guy told me, he says, ain't that something sometimes? As long as it doesn't bother me, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're just gonna take two more, because we've already heard from 10 people. I think we're getting the gist of what's the feeling in the neighborhood.
I'm Joanne Runge, and I own Soudale Mobile Home Court, which is at 6200 North Cliff. So I am just diagonal or kitty corner. I'm on the northeast corner of 72nd Street North and Cliff. I've owned the court probably 30 years. I grew up there. I've been there all my life. So I've watched the area develop and become a residential area. I speak for about 200 people that live in my court, and I know that they would be, well, the ones I've talked to so far, they're just as concerned about the noise and the traffic and the pollution, air pollution, that I am. I'm also concerned about property value. I own 20 acres. Who's going to want to buy it? Who's going to want to move in there? I think you just touched on the point of drainage. All of the drainage from the east side of the road and from the north all come down to that corner on 72nd Street North and Cliff and goes across the street and goes south right by this and right onto this property. So all that drainage is going to go somewhere. And if they put berms up, they're not going to go into this big pit. Where is it going to go? I don't want it backed up because then it's going to go into the housing district on the east side and onto my property. So I think that's a big concern for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Dwayne Bjerkus, 1200 East 67th Street North. I have the privilege of living in the very northeast corner of East 67th Street and Cliff Avenue, so I'm going to have a beautiful bird's eye view of this wonderful enterprise. I also had the privilege of receiving a letter from a concerned citizen. Talked to my neighbor. He didn't receive it, unfortunately. And I appreciate it very much. It's an individual named Ryan Paul Telberg. And thankfully, he had the opportunity to do due diligence, to do his homework that I unfortunately did not have the time to do. But I appreciate his notation of issues such as lung cancer, other potential health problems, kidney disease, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And it also talks about increasing agitation for anyone with asthma. Not that that pertains to my household. However, my wife deals with severe allergies, many of which are dust related. My son deals with extreme sinus problems, problems of which one of the foremost sinus institutes within the city of Sioux Falls told him, unfortunately, you really need to deal with it because there's probably not much we can do for you. Unfortunately, that individual is now deceased, the particular Setliff, I believe it was, that he was dealing with. But the other things of concern to me as well, and it's already been cited, and that's major loss of home value. But this individual, in the due diligence that he did, references Professor Diane Height, a well-known economist in conjunction with Ohio State University, concluded that homes located within a 3-mile radius, not just 1,000 feet, mind you, a 3-mile radius. Mile, 5,280 feet, we're talking about almost 16,000 feet being affected, potentially losing up to 30% of their value. Now, the home that I purchased, which I purchased, I believe, the second one in that development, and it was the model home that the developer, Dunham, had set up. Nice, but much smaller than the one we moved from, down in Nebraska. But we have put forth a great deal of effort over the past 13 or 14 years to endeavor to build sweat equity in that property by finishing off a family room in the basement, 2 additional bedrooms, and a full bath on the 3rd level to elevate the value. In the process right now of adding a 4-season room on the back of it, again, for my wife's hobby of quilting and to increase the value. Also with preparation to put on a 3rd garage stall, again, further increasing the value. The purpose of the sweat equity that we're endeavoring to generate is to be able to enhance forthcoming retirement. We also, each and every one of us here this evening, have all talked about the situation that we realize that within the system that we live in, the concept of retirement is almost a joke. It's something that unless you have really put forth the effort and you haven't suffered from various difficult financial setbacks in the past, your odds of retirement are slim to none, and Slim is on his way out of town. So when we take a look at this, and that's part of the situation that I'm in, that's what brought me to Sioux Falls, a situation of endeavoring to flip a home down in Nebraska that turned into, if anybody here has ever seen the movie The Money Pit?
Let's keep it to the point here, sir.
Okay. The point being that I'm very concerned about the situation with property values. I'm very concerned about the situation of my wife and my son's health. And I'm also concerned about the aesthetics to the community. I would like to be able to I enjoy looking at the bean field or the cornfield, whatever's planted, as opposed to the towers and the washer units and the conveyor belts and all the ironwork and so forth that goes along with the gravel pit. So again, I would think that it would be in the best interest of this committee or this commission to really give serious thought and consideration to the adverse effects that this type of an endeavor could create for the community, for that particular neighborhood, and really give that part of the due diligence that you're going to give your concerns to as well. I thank you for the opportunity to address you. Good evening.
Thank you. I think we have one more person waiting to speak, and then we will close the floor.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Paul Telberg. I live at 1001 East 65th Street North. Well, for starters, I served 3 terms on City Council up in Colton and the Planning and Zoning Commission up there for 2 years. Thanks to the gentleman that just got done speaking, he pretty much spoke everything that I had on my mind anyways. So I would just like to say, though, one thing that bothers me is when you have so many people here that are speaking, you shouldn't limit it as you are public servants. You are here to listen to the people. You aren't here to limit what we have to say. You aren't here to put a number on the people that come to speak to you. You need to listen to them. You work for them. All right. So anyways, I'd like to thank all my neighbors and friends that showed up tonight to speak. I have nothing to add to what's been said, but just remember, you're public servants. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. We have any of you been? How long? Have any of you been on the board since 2011 by chance, or been in your position since then? Anybody? All right. One thing I want to bring up that wasn't mentioned is this isn't the first time we've been in this position. They have tried this before in 1995 and 2011, and we're just beating a dead horse with a stick here. This needs to stop. There's nothing to be gained by the residents by having this operation where it's at, and it's just silly. And only a fool would approve something like this. So have a good evening. Thank you.
I just got Judy Woodard, 6101 North Mineral. I just got two things. You know, they act like that this can be, you know, just no, you can't put houses on there. You can't. Why can't we just farm it? Why are we changing it? And the other thing, it is a residential area. My husband, and I'm sure a lot of nurses and doctors and people that work in nursing homes work overnights. We're right next to it. I can't imagine. I don't even care. Just cars grinding down and going. He's never going to get any sleep, and that's my concern. So that's it.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, my name is Jeff Westaby. I live at 5401 North French Avenue. I have lived out in front of Catfish Bay basically all my life other than 4 years. It's a nice, quiet little area. What I want to touch on is it doesn't matter. They would have to put a dome over this thing to control the dust. Last year when this field was corn, everybody in the neighborhood can attest to that. We were picking corn stalks out of everything that we owned last year. And I understand that that's just the wind, but that's what it's going to be like with the dust. The dust is going to affect every home in that area, including it's going to travel all the way to the truck stop and beyond to McDonald's. There's no way to control that. My son has asthma. He's 20 years old. I just don't want to deal with this in our neighborhood. And like the woman said, we don't want to have to move because of a decision based on a gravel pit. None of you guys live out there. I hope you take that in consideration. We do. We're people just like you. So thank you.
Okay, I see no one else stepping forward, so we'll close the floor. We always. The last
Bill
one.
Schildhauer, 6413 North Cliff. One of my concerns is the traffic and the intersection that they're talking about entering. I travel twice a day on that road for work. Just the freight trucks at that intersection are bad enough. I couldn't imagine more gravel trucks. My other concerns are our city draws water from the wells. I draw off a well up there myself. My wife hangs her laundry out yet. We've already taken a hit on property values on being put into the flood zone, and another hit like this. I bought out there about 8 years ago with intentions of equity, retiring someday and having a house that's worth something. Right now, if it takes another hit, it won't be worth what I owe on it. With that in mind,
All right, thank you, Bill.
Hi, Linda Pearson, 5413 North Indiana Avenue. I just want you guys all to just think of one thing of where you live right now, and they tell you they're going to put a gravel pit in your backyard. Would you like it?
Okay, at this time, we're going to close the floor for discussion with the panel. I know normally we give the petitioner an opportunity to rebut, right, and when we do this. If you don't care to say anything else? Yes, go ahead, sir. Yes, you can come up, and we always give the petitioner a chance to readdress the audience, and then we'll have the discussion and action by the commissions.
I'm going to try to relieve a little bit of the pressure from the neighborhoods here. The property values, when we have this pit, will not probably fall. I started in 1995 with a 160 acre sand pit.
Are you willing to buy us out?
Buy us out then.
Buy us out.
All right.
Would you guys listen? Would you listen? Okay. I bought a sand pit in Sioux Falls over on Cleveland Avenue in 1995. It was 158 acres. We are still got 40 acres of that gravel pit building or mining on yet, and we have filled the other rest of the 110 acres with brand new houses, and they're still building brand new houses there today. A sand pit will not necessarily devalue the property. Your house property will say that sand pit will just come part of it. This whole 157 acres is not going to be mined at one time. It's going to be a portion at a time, and as we mine it, it will become a lake. I mean, if you ever been on the interstate and drove to Brookings, Bose's has his sand pit on the south end of the lake. They already have cabins on the north end of the lake and new houses on the north end and nice homes. So these sand pits don't always devaluate your property. It just adds different type of structure to the neighborhood. As far as you guys are concerned about your wells, we are not pumping any water off the ground. We're using a long stick backhoe to take the sand out of the water so the wells won't go dry. We cannot dewater the property, and we won't. We did a hydraulic report to find out if we had a lake there, if it flooded, if it would affect the houses on the other side of the dig. The guy guarantees me in the hydraulic report, if it floods, the water's going to even out in the underground water, and there's nothing we can do, whether we have a lake or we don't have a lake. It won't make a bit of difference on how fast it goes, but eventually the water's going to get in the subgrade, and it's going to raise the water table in the ground on the other side of the dike. That we have no way to control that, and it will not change because it flows through the sand under the ground. And I guess that's about it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
We'll ask for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry that tonight we had so many experts on so many things that really aren't going to be any different than any other thing. I mean, we sit here month after month and someone comes in and wants to build a house and the neighbors are against it because it's going to ruin their lives. We have someone that wants to build a shed and the neighbors are against it because when they built their house there was no shed there. So what I'm saying is, don't expect this acreage to stay soybeans. It might be a solar array. It could be soybeans. But life is full of change, and the fact is, you know, a lot of these things can't be proven as far as the property value, etc. We hear it all the time. If we open that yarn thing there, if we open that dog kennel thing there, if we allow that electrical transformer to be there, if we put in the power lines, it's going to ruin everything. Life is full of change. It's not zoned museum. That said, I think that the applicant, in failing to get any waivers and failing to do that part of the plan, and I think the clear and present danger to air traffic are very serious items, and I don't see how I can approve it with the airport situation, and so you know, I'll listen to other discussion from the board here, but at this point I'm going to have to say I'm opposed to it based on the concern of the airport.
Okay. Why don't we just poll each member? Paul, you have comments?
I would agree with what Jeff said too. I mean, with the airport concerns, the safety, and I mean, certainly there would be disruption and there would be dust and there would be those things. And as Jeff mentioned, change happens, inconveniences happen. There's no stopping that. But this is certainly a situation where it seems to me that the application definitely falls short.
Okay, Mr. Odie?
I'll echo what Jeff and Paul have stated. I'd just like to tell everybody else out here, we're always afraid of the unknown. Things go on daily that people say it's going to ruin it, but it doesn't. We find ways to work around it. I'm not going to state right now which way I'm going to vote until we do vote, but there are a lot of concerns I have. There are a lot of measures to control the dust. He can wet the pavement. Our farm is very close to Merle and Roy's. They're blasting all the time. We hardly ever hear it. They do such a great job. They wet the roads. There's no dust. So there are options of controlling dust. So I'm just going to leave it at that right now. I'm not going to say how I'm going to vote until we actually have the vote.
Okay, Mike?
I just want to look at this issue. You know, one of the biggest things we're charged with as being on this commission is to look at the appropriateness of land use, and how that does affect, I guess, the surrounding community. In this particular case, I guess, I don't feel this is appropriate in this particular location. That combined again with the airport concern, I guess I would, my vote currently is against this. So that's it.
Becky?
I want to thank everyone who came tonight to express your concerns. I know it always takes a lot of courage to get up and stand in front of a large group of people, and thank you for coming. And as was mentioned, we always listen and consider, and we are charged to consider all aspects, to listen to arguments on both sides, and that is what we do to the very best of our ability. And with that being said, and what was said about land use, my biggest concern is that with the airport and the potential of the geese population, I just don't really know that this is the best place to have a man-made lake developed. So at this point, I would be voting no on this item.
Okay, Bonnie?
I would also like to thank everyone for the letters that we received and for, wow, this is a big crowd. I do have some issues with the safety issues, the issue with the airport, and also with the water issue. Those are huge things for us to look at. I don't disagree with some of the comments made here. It is a point that we're here to try to decide what is the best place for some of these items, and sand and gravel or whatever it is that's been brought before us. At this time, I don't think I could support this. I'll wait to hear what the rest of the city side has to say.
Okay, from my standpoint, this is Mike Seifert. You know, we deal with land use, and is this an appropriate use? Well, as the city said, yes, this is an appropriate use, but is it in the appropriate location? And that's the problem. Other than the airport issue, I know that this pit could be operated appropriately without a lot of concern, but I would have to support staff's recommendation for denial.
This is Kurt Johnson on the city side. Normally, the chair of the city commission doesn't have a vote unless I'm breaking a tie. But there was some testimony given tonight where I do have a lot of personal expertise. I'm a pilot, 14-year resident of Sioux Falls. I've used runway 21 many times. When I'm using it correctly, meaning the approach, I'm going right over this property, basically from the northeast to the southwest, at power settings at an altitude that if a goose were to hop up in front of me, probably wouldn't see it in time if I was in the clouds, nor would I be able to do anything to maneuver around it in time. Some of the other airports that were mentioned, I learned to fly in Des Moines, Iowa. There are no man-made lakes on any of the approach ends of any of the 014 runways there. Minneapolis, sorry, land of 10,000 lakes. The water was there first, but nothing man-made was put in its place. So I probably will not vote, but I'm just, from my pilot side, this is not a good plan.
Sean Irvin from the city side. It's always difficult to balance these kinds of interests. Property owner rights are very important and always should be a consideration. I think it's too often, the residents, neighbors always think that theirs should trump the property owner rights. But in this case, property owner rights are pretty important, and demands by a neighbor and how that neighbor is going to use their property. I'm sure nobody would want somebody telling you, tear down your building, let's put some soybeans in your yard. And so I'm always careful about those. That said, though, I think also, as I hear these arguments about the airport, I know that's not a specific consideration for this, but I think from a planning standpoint, which is what we're really charged with, placing what we know is going to be a lake at the end of an airport. I too have done some airport planning and helipad planning, and that is not good planning. And so in my mind, that is also something that really kicks this into the neighborhood of saying it doesn't make sense in this location.
John Paulson with the City Planning Commission. I'm going with the staff report here in regards to concerns for safety. It not being an application in the best interest of the public. Also with regards to the land use being incompatible with the existing land uses. So I would not be in support of the conditional use request.
Katie Fegan, City Planning. I guess I echo kind of what Commissioner Irving said. There's points I agree and disagree with. My biggest thing comes down to the lack of waivers and recommendation from the airport on their concerns with their issues, I guess.
And Nick Sershin with the city, I agree with Mike. I think done right, this would be a great location for it. And could be operated efficiently and correctly. The hearing from our pilot here, Kurt, could be an issue, and I guess as the airport executive director and our pilot said, I'll take their recommendation.
Okay, thank you. You've heard from all the commission members. I think, any more comments?
No, I was going to make a
Discussion?
motion, Mr. Chair.
Yes?
I'd make a motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the application. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries on the county, or the denial is upheld on the county side.
On the city side, just so,
Please, assistant, just wait till they vote, please.
on the city side, our administration always requests that we vote in the affirmative and then vote yes or no based on that. So, no large gasps when I say this, but I'll look for commission action.
Move for approval.
Got a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion for approval and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of item number 7, please signify by saying yes. All opposed, same sign.
Yes.
Yes.
Item number 7 is not approved on the city side.
Okay, we, at this time, should this be appealed, it will be held, heard again by the joint county and city Tuesday, November 28th at 5 p.m. in Carnegie Hall. So at this time, we'll call for adjournment of the joint city planning.
Move to adjourn the joint
We have a moving-
county city.
We have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor?
On the city side,
Move to adjourn.
adjourn in a second. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
City side is
You,
adjourned.
we'll give you 5 minutes, please, and then we'll move it on to our county business.